Hey all, here OS Reviews. Today we're taking a closer look at the ZEEKER P10. This claims to be the world's first rugged Android smartphone with a massive 108 megapixel primary camera. And on top of that, it's also one of the few phones I've seen that has a IR night vision lens, which allows it to also take images and record video in complete darkness, which is a pretty rare selling point. And otherwise, it's a mid-tier smartphone that sells for around $350, comes unlocked, it's a 4G LTE device, and also has a gigantic 6,000 milliamp hour capacity battery with 18 watts fast charging and also 15 watts wireless Qi charging. This is a relatively new brand, and they're a subsidiary of a company called Kubi. It's also not super well known here in the US, but you can consider them as rivals to brands like Umidigi, Ulefone, just to name a few of the Shenzhen-based OEMs, and otherwise it has a 6.5-inch display, which is Full HD plus resolution, has 6 gigs of built-in RAM, 128 gigs of built-in storage, further expandable via micro SD card, and as a rugged phone, of course, it's going to be drop-proof up to 1.8 meters, shock-proof, and also waterproof. The camera array also consists of a 8 megapixel ultra-wide-angle 120-degree lens, though it doesn't have a telephoto lens nor a macro lens on this particular setup. The phone is running on a version of Android 11, which they've customized to called ZEEKER UI. It comes with built-in NFC, standards like Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, as well as GPS can all be expected here. Now inside of the box here, aside from just the phone itself, we do also have a wall adapter, which does support up to the full 18 watts of fast charging, pretty compact. And we also have a Type-C USB cable along with a included 3.5mm pair of headphones that also has a built-in mic. Pretty rare to see these days. Even bundles a Type-C to full-size Type-A USB adapter if you want to plug in a thumb drive, a mouse, and this supports OTG. And it does have a factory pre-applied screen protector as well out of the box. We do have the aforementioned front-facing hole punch camera, which is 8 megapixels by the way, and we do have the earpiece and notification proximity sensors. Overall, there is going to be a little bit of a bezel here, of course, compared to a regular phone, but it doesn't take away from the fact that it's still a beautiful screen, and the larger bezels here just accommodates the shockproof nature. It's also slightly raised at the bumpers here, so if you put the phone completely flat, it's also not going to be touching the Corning Gorilla Glass display first, providing some extra resistance. Now the phone definitely feels quite substantial in the hands, and the frame is made out of aluminum alloy. The right-hand spine houses the fingerprint scanner, which is a pretty good placement. It is a very accurate sensor in my testing so far. You also get a nice textured power key and volume rockers, which are all very tactile and responsive. The bottom here houses a flap that covers up the 3.5mm headphone jack, along with the Type-C port for charging and data. There is a lanyard strap. Then on the left-hand spine, there is a customizable hotkey that you can program to open up any application you want, as well as the SIM card / micro SD card expansion slot. And again, nice thick bumpers at all the edges that protects it from drops. Finally, on the back here, we do have speakers, but I do wish that these speakers would have been placed at the bottom or towards the front, since the rear placement is still a little easy to cover up. Primary 108 megapixel lens, which typically has pixel binning just to reduce the resolution and get you a clearer shot, in addition to the night vision as well as the wide angle and depth camera sensors. The entire back cover here is made out of this, what looks like carbon fiber. It's actually kind of a soft felt-like material, which reminds me of almost a cloth that you would have on your shirt. So it's actually really nice to touch, and as you're gripping the phone, super easy to hold and doesn't attract any fingerprints. Here's a quick size comparison with a few other rugged phones we've checked out recently, including the Umidigi Bison Pro. Umidigi's device notably has a smaller battery, a less powerful processor, as well as less RAM on the base model at only 4 gigs, but it's also going to be a little bit cheaper. Overall though, I would say ZEEKER's P10 definitely feels a little bit more premium in its fit and finish, as well as its accents. It's also more of a mid-range phone compared to the entry-level range that Umidigi were targeting with the Bison series. The fingerprint scanner can also be used for different gestures, including long holding to trigger different programs, using it to take images when you're in the camera app. You can set that up using the settings. So speaking of, here is what the main homepage looks like. We still have the feed here on the left that can take us through different news articles, and you can also bring back the drawer if you want to go through the full list of applications. So it still is familiar looking enough, although some of the icons have been slightly tweaked. Display here is excellent. It gets super bright. So this is a display that you won't have any problems with even if you're in glaring sunlight and see it. In fact, I do find that in a way, if you're at night lying in bed, you do often have to just set it to the minimum setting for it to become comfortable, but definitely not a bad problem to have. Overall, it's just very vivid for a IPS panel, offering great contrast and viewing angles. They do give you a handful of included wallpapers, and here's just a quick look at what some of those are like, showing off again the vibrancy of the display pretty well. All of these are pretty adventure themed to go with the whole rugged nature of the phone. Transitions that can also be customized, bring up different widgets, even theme packages can be tweaked around as well. So you're able to change how the icons are displayed. All of this can be changed as part of the built-in ZEEKER UI that they have on top of Android 11. So it has a fair amount of customization, including a minimized single hand mode. If you find the phone to be too large to use, you can also shrink the display, set up the customizable key for a single, double, and long press to open up to 3 different programs, even hide the hole punch notch. If you really don't like it, you can create a black bar to try and hide it, which again, it's not a OLED display, but still gets you a pretty good effect, as well as giving you the ability to even change animations like for charging. So if you plug it in, it will display something like this versus a different type of effect. It is impressive to see such a complete list of features that you can tweak from a relatively new brand. Even the About Phone settings here has been slightly tweaked to just look a little bit different, but overall very clean. And there are some sporadic updates that the company pushes over. I've already gotten one out of the box here after installing and setting things up for the first time. Although like any new brand, it remains to be seen in terms of track records of whether they will providing continuous updates in the future. So fingers crossed that the answer is maybe yes. Anyways, we do have the standard Google apps that's built on in, along with the Play Store, and finally the aforementioned some built-in toolbox apps, which allows you to again access some compass tools and other functions which a rugged phone outdoor enthusiast might appreciate. Let's take a closer look at the camera experience. It is a pretty clean interface, and we are able to toggle on the AI mode, which can recognize different objects like food, animals, and just slightly tweak the contrast and properties to compensate. You can also turn on the HDR mode. Advanced settings also allow us to change the resolution of our image, so you can go up to the full 108 megapixels, but you can also scale it down to 48, 65, as well as 29 megapixels. To access the wide-angle lens, all you need to do is pinch out, and you'll see a slight flick, and then it will go over here to that next lens. It's not the smoothest, but overall it does work well enough. You will, of course, notice a drop in the quality of the image, because 8 megapixels versus 108 is a pretty big delta. However, it still is a very versatile set of cameras, I think. Now, for video recording, it does capture up to full HD, so unfortunately it doesn't seem to record up to 4K, which is a little interesting. It doesn't have OIS, but does offer EIS, also the night vision mode. So in fact, if we try to dim all the lights, which you can see up to 50 feet away and still is impressively good at capturing details, just like home security cameras, it could also be good for things like capturing, let's say, animals or spying on things in the dark. Just know that everything will be in black and white monochrome. Reviewing some of the camera samples here, overall I would say, again, it is a fairly capable lens at 108 megapixels. You will be getting a ton of detail at the very least. With that being said, with that big sensor, sometimes it does take a little bit longer, admittedly, to completely focus or process an image, I should say. Not quite as instantaneous as a flagship like a Pixel, for instance, where it's just snap and go. But that's, again, to be expected with a much lower price that this phone is sitting at. And overall, it is still a very satisfactory experience. Colors look natural, but still have a nice overall saturation at the same time. I should mention that, again, the Helio G85 seems to be doing a pretty good job in terms of just generally navigating around the UI. Everything feels pretty snappy and fast. So here we are. Let's play it back in full screen. So some of the takeaways here would be that overall, again, it's just an okay speaker, I think. It does get plenty loud, especially at maximum volume, but it's can be a little bit easily covered up since it's on the back, and it can be a little tinny to be completely honest, but the good thing here is you can definitely plug in your own headphones that will really improve the quality, or use Bluetooth. And for things like just watching back some quick clips, watching back a YouTube video, there's certainly no problems at all in terms of the overall volume, and still gets you a pretty good experience thanks to this beautiful display, which really is quite immersive for a rugged phone. And I personally think that this hole punch notch is going to be not as obtrusive as some of the older teardrop designs that we've been seeing, and it's also been used on the competing Bison series. It offers good Wi-Fi reception as well as 4G LTE reception when trying it out with T-Mobile and AT&T in the Seattle region. I was able to typically just get a very fast speed when it comes to scrubbing between parts of a video, loading up web pages, things like that. No real stutters or anything like that. In fact, almost full bars for Wi-Fi, even though we're a little bit further from the router at the moment. 6 gigabytes of RAM is sufficient for opening up, I would say, around 8 to 10 tabs in the browser without really noticing any delays, or switching between the open tabs doesn't really cause the images and text to re-render or reload. So we can try out something like The Verge, a pretty complex page. In fact, let's try the full desktop version of that site, and you can see how everything does load up relatively quickly, despite the complexity of this page with lots of videos and ads and text, but really not doing a bad job at all. You definitely will not feel annoyed or anything like that when it comes to using it. Coupled with the beautiful and vibrant display, overall gets you a very good experience when it comes to reading back articles. Let's try jumping into a different tab. So I was trying to search up Kubi, which is the parent company of ZEEKER. So I was learning a bit more about this, and we can see here that we're able to still load back pages very quickly. Some of the built-in system utility tools, again, ZEEKER have also customized the UI for consistency, including the clock is now oversized, and I do like the way that it looks compared to stock Android. It's a nice kind of breath of fresh air, although if you are a purist, that might be something that you would think otherwise of. And there is also a completely different calculator app as well, so we can jump into that from the quick settings. It looks like this with the rounded icons. There's also a built-in Notes app, but not the stock Google one. And interestingly though, the Notes here is restricted to what they claim as 20,000 characters in a single note. So that's a little strange. I don't think necessarily that they should impose a character limit on a memo pad, but anyways, there's definitely a few kind of interesting little separate apps, including an FM radio that you can find here. And again, you can see how as we are opening up these different programs, things are still pretty fast in terms of the fluidity. As far as phone call quality is concerned, a staple of any cell phone, overall it works well thanks to the strong reception quality. Everything sounds audible, including the earpiece is nice and loud, although I will say that I have heard maybe slightly clearer primary mics, so it sounds fine on here, but just a minor quirk. Otherwise, in terms of battery life, as aforementioned, the gigantic 6,000 milliamp hour pack will definitely last you through at least 2, if not 3 days of regular usage, although it is worth mentioning that because of the big size, fully charging up the battery will take a little bit longer, 2.5 hours to completely top up. But for the flip side of getting you, again, upwards of multiple days before you need to recharge it, depending on how much you're using the phone. If it's as light as just making phone calls, occasionally checking something out, it can definitely last you even longer than 3 days. It can definitely be worthwhile if you are a road warrior further away from an outlet. And speaking of, again, the wireless charging also works really nicely. It's a great additional function, but there is no reverse wireless charging on here. Last but not least, I think we can talk about the gaming performance of this device, playing back pretty much any title that you'll find from the Google Play Store. Now, I will say that during gaming, the phone does get a little bit more warm during operation. For things that are more pressing on the GPU, you'll find the back of the phone to get a bit more heated up, but it never becomes too concerning, and overall still remains a comfortable experience, not too heavy as you're using it for playing back those titles. Of course, the bigger battery here does mean that one benefit is you're able to game for longer as well. Pretty fast to open. Touchscreen here feels responsive thanks to the Corning Gorilla Glass, and all in all, really not a bad experience, I have to say. So that's more or less it as far as our hands-on review of the ZEEKER P10. This is a pretty impressive foray into the world of rugged phones for this brand, and I really do like the way that it's constructed. I also personally do like the flourishes on top of Android 11, including a lot of extra features and attention to detail. One of the better rugged Android smartphones that we've seen here in 2021. You can check out more details if you're interested, and links down below. But for now, that's been our video. Thanks for watching here at OS Reviews. That's been the ZEEKER P10.